Can gravity bend time? Before you try to answer, pause, feel the weight of that question. Imagine holding it in your hands, heavy, slippery, almost impossible to grasp. It's not the kind of question that stays still. The more you turn it over, the more it seems to twist and fold on itself, like a piece of paper that refuses to lie flat. You trust gravity. You live with it every moment, though you rarely think of it. It's the gentle tug that keeps your body anchored to the floor, the pull that keeps the moon tethered to the earth and the earth circling the sun. You don't question gravity. It is the invisible architecture of your days. And you trust time even more. You measure your life by it down to the smallest second. You rely on its rhythm. A second is always a second, a minute always 60. Time has never asked your permission. It has simply moved forward, dragging you with it, marking your beginnings and endings with a precision that feels beyond doubt. But now you've placed these two trusted things, gravity and time, side by side, and suddenly the ground of certainty wobbles. Because what if they are not as separate as you thought? What if gravity, that steady downward pull, reaches into the flow of time itself? What if the minutes you've lived, the hours you've waited, the years you've claimed as your own, are not as universal as you imagined? It feels absurd, almost offensive. You want to push back, to insist that time is steady, untouched, impartial. Surely gravity can bend space. Yes, you've heard that somewhere, but time, that seems too much. And yet the question lingers, heavier than it first appeared. Because if gravity can bend time, then the reality you've always trusted begins to tilt. The world you thought was level is not level at all. Think about it. If time bends, then whose time bends with it? Does it mean your clock ticks slower than someone else? Does it mean that high above you on some mountaintop, time is rushing just a little faster than the time that flows here where you sit? Does it mean that the second you are living now, this very heartbeat, has already slipped out of sync with someone else's heartbeat just a few steps away? The thought is uncomfortable. It chips away at something you didn't realize you were clinging to. The assumption that time belongs to all of us equally, that it moves with the same rhythm for every creature, in every place. But if gravity really bends time, then time is not universal. It is local. It is personal. It depends on where you are, how deeply you are pulled. And if that's true, then you have never shared the same now with anyone else, not perfectly, not completely. It's the kind of realization that sits quietly at first, like a seed. And then slowly it begins to grow. Because if your time can bend under gravity's hand, what about your memories? The things you've kept as fixed points in your past, were they experienced at the same rhythm by others? What about your future, the plans you hold like lanterns in the distance? If time itself is pliable, what becomes of the promises it makes to you? You begin to feel a strange unease, like standing at the edge of a cliff at night, unable to see the drop but knowing it is there. And still the question pulls you deeper. Can gravity bend time? There's a part of you that wants to laugh, to shrug it off as a trick of words. It feels like something philosophers might toss around to pass the hours, or poets might whisper when they want to sound profound. But no, it isn't only philosophy. It isn't only poetry. Scientists with their equations and experiments have asked this question too, and their answers are stranger than the question itself. But before we can follow them, before we can step into the strange corridors they've uncovered, we have to sit with the question a little longer. Because what does it mean for something to bend time? To bend, not break, not destroy, just bend. When you bend a line, you change its direction. When you bend a note, you change its pitch. When you bend a rule, you stretch its meaning without snapping it entirely. To bend time means that time itself can be reshaped, redirected, slowed, or stretched, depending on where it flows. Imagine a river. You picture it running straight, steady, carrying everything forward at the same speed. But then you notice an obstacle, a great stone in the water, heavy and immovable. The current slows around it, curls, changes its rhythm. Some water takes longer paths, others rush ahead. The river is still one river, but the flow is uneven, bent around what stands in its way. Now replace the stone with gravity. Replace the water with time. The metaphor begins to shimmer with possibility. And with that image, you start to sense the unsettling truth. Maybe time isn't the flat, straight river you thought it was. Maybe it has bends and eddies and hidden currents, shaped by the invisible weight of the universe. But still, the question bites. If gravity can bend time, how could you ever feel it? You don't sense your seconds stretching or shrinking. You don't wake up one morning to discover you've lived a little longer than someone standing on a mountain. To you, your time feels consistent, always the same. That's part of the mystery, that's part of the trap. Time bends, and yet you never notice. It happens so quietly, so smoothly, that you live inside the illusion of steadiness, even as the universe is playing with the rhythm of your life. You might find yourself asking, why does this matter? If I can't feel it, if I live my life as though my seconds are mine alone, why does it matter if time bends under gravity? And yet, the fact that you can't feel it may be the most haunting part, because it means the universe is stranger than your senses can reveal. It means your experience is not the final authority on reality. It means the story you tell yourself about living inside a steady, universal time is just that, a story. The truth waits, hidden under the pull of gravity. And so the question remains, open, pulsing, impossible to ignore. Can gravity bend time? For now, you don't need the answer. You only need the weight of the question pressing gently against your thoughts. You only need to feel the first crack forming in your certainty, the sense that something vast and strange is waiting just beyond what you can see. Because the moment you wonder if gravity can bend time, you've already stepped off the familiar path. You've already begun the descent into a world where the steady ticking of clocks is no longer a given, where even the meaning of now is not as simple as you thought. And once you've taken that step, there is no going back. You can feel it now, the wobble in your certainty, the unease in the thought that time may not be as steady as you once believed. But unease alone is not enough. You want to know, how did we get here? Who first dared to imagine that gravity and time might be tangled together? It's easy to forget that for most of human history, time was something we didn't even try to measure precisely. We watched the sun rise and fall. We noticed the waxing and waning of the moon. We counted the seasons by the shifting of the stars. Time was bound to the sky, cosmic and regular, but it was also vague. Days were long or short depending on the season, depending on where you stood on Earth. No one thought of a second as something that must be identical everywhere for everyone. The precision came later. Think back to the first mechanical clocks, heavy pendulums swinging back and forth in dark church towers. These devices gave the impression of stability. Here was something that ticked evenly regardless of sun or season. Time became not just celestial but mechanical. It could be trusted. You could hear its steady march in the middle of the night. The idea of a universal time, something that applied equally to all, was not born from the stars but from gears, weights, and pendulums. It was an invention, and once it took hold, it changed everything. We began to think of time as an invisible ruler stretched across the universe. One scale, one measurement, one truth. And yet, even then, there were cracks. You see, the more precise our clocks became, the more uncomfortable questions began to surface. Sailors noticed that pendulum clocks behaved differently at sea than on land because the motion and the latitude subtly shifted the swing. Scientists began to wonder if gravity itself had a hand in the rhythm. The Earth was not uniform. Its pull varied slightly depending on where you were, and so did the tick of the clock. It was a quiet foreshadowing, an early whisper that time might not be the same everywhere. But no one wanted to hear it yet. Time was too precious as a tool, too vital for navigation, for trade, for the structuring of society. To admit that it was pliable was to admit that our instruments, our ships, even our daily rhythms were less reliable than we wanted them to be. So the cracks were covered over. A second was declared to be a second, the same for all, no matter what. But reality has a way of refusing to sit still under our definitions. Centuries later, when telescopes grew sharper and mathematics more daring, scientists began to notice stranger things. They noticed that light, the one thing that seemed to move without care for planets or forces, was also bound by rules we hadn't expected. No matter where you measured it, no matter how fast you yourself were moving, the speed of light remained the same. That discovery was like a stone thrown into the river of certainty. It sent ripples outward, unsettling every assumption we had made about space, motion, and yes, time. And then came Einstein. Imagine him, a patent clerk in Switzerland, reading documents in the quiet. his mind burning with questions no one else seemed to ask. He took the constancy of light and followed it to its radical conclusion. If light refuses to change its speed, then something else must change to make the universe consistent. And the thing that could give way, the only thing left, was time itself. This was the moment the dam broke. The tidy picture of a universal clock shattered. Time was no longer an independent stage on which the universe played. It was part of the stage itself, woven with space into something deeper, space-time, and space-time could bend. At first, this was only mathematics, strange symbols on a page, but the meaning of those symbols was staggering. Gravity is not a force pulling down on you, but the warping of space-time itself. And when space-time bends, time bends with it. The intuition you've carried your whole life, that a second is a second, the same for everyone, was revealed as an illusion, a comfortable lie. But stop here for a moment. Don't rush forward. Imagine what it would have felt like to live in that time, to be someone hearing these ideas for the first time. Imagine carrying with you the certainty that time is universal, then suddenly being told it is not. It must have felt like standing on a shoreline, watching the ocean pull back in silence, realizing a tidal wave was on its way. And here you are now, sitting in the long wake of that realization. Time bends under gravity. That's the claim, but you're not satisfied with claims. You want to know, how do we know this? How can something so hidden, so invisible, be true? The answer will come, but first you need to lean deeper into the strangeness, because before we can gather the evidence, we must allow our old intuitions to crumble. So sit with this thought. If gravity bends time, then every moment of your life has been shaped by a force you cannot feel. Every laugh, every silence, every breath you've taken has flowed along a current you didn't know was there. And now perhaps you feel the first stirrings of awe, the sense that the seconds you thought you owned were never really yours. They were part of a fabric stretched and curved by the cosmos itself. This is the setup, the quiet before the deeper unraveling. You stand on the edge of a revelation with the old certainties behind you and the unknown ahead. And the unknown has only just begun to speak. You've taken the first steps. You've loosened your grip on certainty. You've admitted the possibility that time is not the same for everyone, everywhere. But there's a difference between nodding politely at the idea and letting it truly sink into your life. So let's slow down, let's let it sink. Start with something simple. Imagine you and a friend are standing together side by side, both checking your watches. You nod at each other. A second passes, 2, 3. The ticking feels synchronized, natural, without doubt. To you, both clocks march in step. To you, both bodies live inside the same rhythm. Now imagine your friend slowly climbs a mountain while you remain at sea level. You stay connected, your watch is still ticking, your heart still beating. But here's the twist. If you could measure with infinite precision, you would discover that their seconds are running just a little faster than yours. Their clock ticks more quickly. Their body ages more swiftly. Their time is bending differently than your own, pulled less strongly by Earth's gravity. And yet to both of you, nothing feels different. You share messages, share laughs, share silences, and both of you believe you're living the same seconds. The deception is perfect. Only later, when you reunite, would the difference reveal itself in the quiet betrayal of the clocks. That is what it means to live inside the bend. Gravity does not rip time apart violently. It does not shout its presence. It bends time with a patience so smooth you never notice it happening. You live your days as though the river flows evenly, while beneath the surface it is already twisting. And here comes the disorienting part. It's not only mountain tops and sea levels. It's not only black holes and distant galaxies. It's everywhere. Right now, as you sit here, the time passing for your feet is not exactly the same as the time passing for your head. The difference is so small you would never notice, but it exists. The gravitational pull is slightly stronger closer to the ground, slightly weaker just a meter above. And that means your body is stretched across two subtly different flows of time. Think about that. You are not one continuous rhythm. You are a gradient. This is the quiet strangeness that science reveals. Your very body is a clock with many dials, each whispering in slightly different tempos, each slightly out of sync with the others. And yet your mind stitches it all together into the illusion of unity. When Einstein first suggested this, it sounded like madness. How could anyone believe that time bends this way invisibly without you noticing? But slowly the pieces began to fit. The mathematics predicted it. Equations confirmed it. Time is not universal, it never was. And now you face the deeper question, what does that mean for you? Because if time bends, then what you call the present is not a single universal moment. It is a patchwork of local presence, each slightly offset depending on where you stand, how fast you move, how deeply you sit in the pull of gravity. There is no one now. There are only many nows stitched together. And that thought is unsettling. It means that even when you are with someone you love, sharing a moment that feels perfectly mutual, perfectly synchronous, you are not truly in the same moment. Their time and your time are always slightly apart. The universe refuses to give you perfect simultaneity. What you call together is always an approximation. Pause here, let that feeling ripple out, because it reshapes more than just physics. It reshapes your sense of intimacy, of presence, of memory. If no two people are ever perfectly synchronized, then every shared experience is, in a quiet way, already fragmented. And yet it feels whole, it feels seamless. You laugh together, you cry together, you speak words at the same time, and your lives overlap enough to give you the illusion of unity. Maybe that's the human trick. To live inside broken synchrony and call it love, call it friendship, call it community. And maybe gravity is the silent accomplice, bending your seconds apart without ever telling you. You might be tempted to shrug it off. The differences are small after all, a fraction of a fraction. Why care about a second stretched here, a second lost there? You won't notice, so what does it matter? But that question is a trap. Because if something as fundamental as time bends, even by the smallest degree, it means the universe itself is not built on the absolutes you thought it was. Small differences are enough to shatter certainty. They are enough to open the door to deeper mysteries. Consider the GPS in your phone, the satellites orbiting overhead live in weaker gravity than you do here on Earth. Their clocks tick faster than yours. If the engineers ignored that fact, if they pretended time was the same everywhere, your directions would be wrong by kilometers within minutes. The map would lead you astray, you would be lost. So this bending of time is not just poetry, it is not just philosophy. It is woven into the practical fabric of your life, hidden inside the technology you use every day. You live in a world where your machines already correct for the fact that gravity bends time differently in the sky than on the ground. And if that doesn't unsettle you, maybe it should. Because it means your daily life is quietly dependent on the strangeness you cannot feel. So where does this leave you? Back at the question, can gravity bend time? You no longer ask it as a curiosity, as a casual wonder. Now you feel the weight of it pressing deeper. Because to admit that gravity bends time is to admit that your experience is not final, that your perception is not truth. The world is stranger than you can feel. And yet this is only the beginning. So far we've tiptoed along the edges, brushed against the cracks in intuition. But soon the ground will give way entirely. Soon you will see how the bending of time is not just subtle, not just practical, but cosmic. Soon you will see how time bends so violently near a black hole that the very meaning of past and future begins to unravel. But not yet. For now, sit with this. The seconds you thought you shared with others were never truly the same. The present you live in is already fractured. You are always, in every heartbeat, slightly out of sync with the universe around you. And somehow that doesn't make life smaller. It makes it more mysterious, because maybe what matters is not perfect synchrony, but the illusion of it. Maybe what matters is not whether your time is the same as mine, but that we believe it is, and live as though it were true. Gravity bends time, it has always bent time, and you, without knowing it, have always lived inside that bend. You've sat with the question, you've allowed it to trouble you. You've entertained the unsettling idea that time bends under gravity's weight, that your seconds may not be the same as someone else's, but maybe still a part of you resists. Maybe you whisper to yourself, it can't be that strange. Surely the differences are too small to matter. Surely the rhythm of life goes on as I feel it. But here is where your intuition must break. Because what begins as a tiny fracture, barely noticeable in the everyday world, widens into a canyon when you look deeper. The bending of time is not just a technical detail. It is not a quirk of equations. It is a fundamental shift in how the universe behaves. So let us begin tearing away the comfort. Imagine you are floating in space, far from Earth, far from any planet or star. Out here, the pull of gravity is weak. Your seconds flow freely, unhurried, as close as you can get to what you once thought of as universal time. Now imagine your twin remains on Earth, living through the familiar rhythm of days and nights, anchored by gravity's hand. Years later, you return. You expect to see your twin unchanged, or at least changed in step with you. But when you meet again, you discover that your lives have diverged. Their body has aged differently than yours. Their seconds have not matched your seconds. You thought you had shared the same stretch of existence, but you hadn't. Your journeys through time were out of step from the beginning. How can that be? How can two lives, once identical, drift apart in something as fundamental as age, in something as personal as a heartbeat? This is the breaking point. This is where your intuition insists that time must be universal, must be the same for both of you, but the universe refuses to obey. And if that example feels like a thought experiment, like something too abstract to matter, let's make it sharper. Consider the surface of a black hole, a place where gravity is so strong that light itself cannot escape. Imagine standing at the edge, peering into its darkness while your friend hovers at a safe distance, watching you. To them, it seems as though your time has slowed, your movement stretched into an unbearable slowness. As you reach toward the horizon, your hand appears to freeze. To them, you never quite cross the edge. To them, you are suspended, forever caught at the boundary. But to you, time feels normal. Your seconds tick as they always do, your breath comes in rhythm, your thoughts unfold, to you nothing slows. And yet by the time you try to look back, the universe you knew has already rushed ahead. Stars have burned out, galaxies have shifted, entire epochs have passed while for you only moments slipped by. So whose time is real, yours or theirs? This is where your intuition screams for rescue. It begs for the universe to pick one, to declare a single truth, to restore the fairness of shared time. But the universe does not pick. It allows both to be true. Time has bent so radically that your experience and theirs no longer match, and both are correct. This is the fracture. This is the point where you can no longer cling to the old certainty. Because time does not flow evenly. It does not belong equally to all. It bends, it warps, it twists under the weight of gravity. And in doing so, it denies you the comfort of a universal clock. And yet, this brokenness is not limited to extremes like black holes. It echoes in quieter places too. Think about standing on the floor of a canyon, the stone walls rising above you. Time here runs slower than it does for someone standing at the rim. Not enough to feel, not enough to ruin your day, but enough that if you could compare perfectly, you would see the difference. Enough that if you lived your whole life at the bottom while someone else lived their whole life at the top, you would not meet in the same place when you reached old age. Your bodies would carry different counts of seconds. And once again, your intuition rebels. You think, but that can't be right. How could time itself split apart like that? How could the same world hold two rhythms at once? But that rebellion is the sound of intuition breaking. Because the truth is this, the world does hold two rhythms at once. It holds 1,000, 1,000,000, as many as there are places and motions. Each patch of the universe sings time in its own key, its own tempo, bent by the gravity it feels. The illusion of one grand rhythm is just that, an illusion. You begin to sense how radical this is. It means that now is not a single thread stretching across the cosmos, binding every star and planet into the same moment. It means that now is fractured, scattered, divided. Your present and mine are cousins, not twins. They resemble each other, but they are not identical. And what of the future? What of the past? If time bends differently for different observers, then the story of what happens when it happens cannot be told with one voice. It must be told with many, overlapping, none quite agreeing, none holding absolute authority. This is the undoing of certainty. And yet, as you sit with it, another thought rises, uninvited. Maybe this brokenness is beautiful. Maybe the bending of time is not a flaw in the universe, but its most delicate feature, because it means your life is not generic. It means your seconds are not copies of anyone else's. You live in your own rhythm, whether you know it or not. Your time is yours, shaped by where you are, how you move, how the cosmos cradles you. Still, the strangeness presses in. You cannot return to the simplicity you once held. The belief in a single, universal clock is gone. You've seen the fracture, you've felt the canyon opening, you've watched your intuition break. And this breaking is only the beginning. Because if gravity bends time, then everything, your body, your history, your future, even the fate of the universe itself, must be reimagined. And as unsettling as that may be, it is also the path forward. The only question is, will you keep walking? You've already let go of the idea that time is universal. You felt the crack in certainty. You've stood at the canyon's edge watching your old intuition collapse, but cracks alone aren't enough. To truly let go, you must face the paradoxes head-on. You must walk into them, sit with them, and accept that they will not resolve in the way you want them to. Because once you begin to believe that gravity bends time, you quickly stumble into contradictions that seem impossible. And yet, they are not only possible, they are real. Let's begin with the twin paradox, that unsettling thought experiment where two twins live separate lives under different conditions of time. Imagine them again. One remains on Earth, tethered to its gravity, grounded in the ordinary rhythm of days. The other takes a journey into space, orbiting near a massive planet or skimming the edge of a black hole, where time bends more dramatically. When they reunite, they do not meet as equals. One is older, one is younger. Their lives no longer align. Your intuition cries out, but how? They began at the same moment, born from the same second. Shouldn't they live the same number of seconds? But no, the universe allows them to diverge. Time itself has kept two separate tallies. Two clocks once synchronized are forever split apart. This is not fantasy, it has been tested. Airplanes carrying atomic clocks have flown around the world, compared to clocks on the ground, and returned showing measurable differences. Tiny differences, yes, but real. And if the experiment lasted longer, or if the gravity involved was stronger, those differences would widen into something undeniable. Now pause with that. Two clocks, two lives, two truths. No universal rhythm to bring them back into harmony. That is the first paradox. Time, which you thought was one, is many. But it goes deeper. Imagine standing near a black hole again, close enough to feel its pull, but not so close that you fall inside. From your perspective, time flows as it always does. You raise your hand, you lower it. You count seconds, 1, 2, 3. But to someone watching from far away, your movements stretch into slow motion. Your hand rises almost imperceptibly. Your voice lengthens into a deep, drawn-out note. To them, you are frozen, barely moving at all. So which is true? Are you moving normally, or are you frozen? Both. And here is where your intuition collapses entirely, because the universe does not give you one answer. It allows both perspectives even when they contradict. For you, the seconds pass evenly. For them, the seconds stretch into eternity. Both experiences are real, both are valid, and no hidden truth exists to declare one correct. That is the second paradox. Time is not one story, but many overlapping, each told from a different vantage point. And yet, there is still more to undo. Think about the word now. You use it constantly without hesitation. I am here now, we are together now, this is happening now. But if time bends under gravity, then now itself begins to dissolve. Your now is not my now. Your now is not even the same as the now just a few meters above your head. There is no universal present, no shared slice of reality binding us all together. Instead, the universe is a patchwork of local times, stitched into a fabric that does not align cleanly. What you call now is simply your own experience of time's bend. It is not absolute, it is not global, it is only yours. And here comes the third paradox. The most familiar word in your life, now, is an illusion of unity. There is no single now, there never was. Stop for a moment, let yourself feel the disorientation. Let yourself grieve a little for the world you thought you lived in, the steady world, the fair world, the world where time belonged to all equally. That world is gone, it was never real. And yet notice something else. Notice that even as these paradoxes shatter your intuition, you are still here. You are still breathing, still living, still experiencing time as smooth, steady, ordinary. You don't feel the bends, the fractures, the contradictions, you never will. To you, your seconds always flow evenly. And maybe that is its own kind of paradox. The universe may be strange, but it hides its strangeness so well that you live comfortably inside the illusion of stability. But illusions have consequences. Think again of GPS satellites. Their clocks tick faster than yours because they orbit higher where Earth's gravity is weaker. If engineers ignored this, if they treated time as universal, your phone would place you miles from your true location. The map would betray you, the navigation would be useless. So even though you can't feel time bending, your life depends on acknowledging it. Every direction you follow, every journey you take, every message that finds its way to you relies on the truth of bent time. The paradox is not abstract, it is practical, unavoidable, woven into your daily existence. And if you want one more paradox, perhaps the most unsettling of all, consider this. Time bends differently not only across space but across your own body. The seconds passing at your feet are not exactly the same as the seconds passing at your head. You are already stretched across different flows of time, living as a being who is never fully synchronized with themselves. You are, in a quiet and imperceptible way, always fragmented, always divided, always more than one. This is the breaking of intuition. It is not comfortable, it is not easy. It is the feeling of standing in a hall of mirrors where every reflection is slightly distorted, slightly delayed, slightly out of sync. You search for the one that is real, the one that shows you the truth, but there isn't one. They are all real and none of them can claim supremacy. And so your old belief, your certainty that time is steady, universal, fair, is gone. In its place is a strange, shifting world where truth is local, perspective is everything, and gravity holds the power to bend even the seconds of your life. This is the paradox you live inside. And though it unsettles you, though it breaks the comfort of your intuition, it also opens a door. Because once you accept that time bends, you are free to see the universe not as a rigid machine, but as a living fabric, flexible, pliable, mysterious. And the fabric has more to reveal, because so far we've only looked at the cracks, the contradictions, the small fractures in intuition. But soon we will gather the evidence. Soon we will step into the proof, the experiments, the undeniable demonstrations that show how gravity really does bend time. And when we do, the awe will only deepen. But first, let yourself linger here. Let yourself sit with the brokenness. Because only when your old intuitions are fully shattered can the new picture take root. Only when you let go of the illusion of universal time can you begin to grasp the strange, beautiful truth of the universe. Your intuition has cracked. You've seen the twin paradox. You've watched time stretch near black holes. You've admitted that even now itself dissolves into a patchwork of fractured moments, but perhaps some corner of your mind is still whispering, maybe this is all exaggeration. Maybe these are just exotic thought experiments, curiosities that don't touch the ground of real life. So let's strip away that last refuge. Let's tear down the illusion completely. Because the truth is that bent time is not distant. It is not hidden away in the remote corners of the cosmos. It is here. It is everywhere. You live inside it every second of your life. And the fact that you cannot feel it is not proof of its absence. It is proof of how perfectly the illusion has been built around you. Consider again your own body. At this very moment, as you sit or lie down, the time at your head is not identical to the time at your feet. The difference is tiny, impossibly small, but real. Gravity is slightly stronger near the ground, slightly weaker higher up. That means your feet, closer to the pull, live in slower time than your head. So what are you really? You are not a single rhythm. You are a vertical gradient of time. A body stretched across multiple flows, stitched together by a mind that refuses to notice the seams. That thought alone is enough to make your intuition collapse, but let's make it stranger. Imagine two people, one standing on the ground, one hovering just above them on a platform. From a distance, they appear to share the same present. They look at each other, they speak, they laugh, but in truth, their clocks tick at different rates. The one below ages slightly more slowly than the one above. The longer they stay this way, the more their lives diverge, invisible but real. You want to say that's impossible. They are standing right next to each other. How could they not share the same time? But they don't. Their now is already fractured. And here's the part that twists the knife. They will never notice. They will live as though nothing is different, even though their lives are slowly, silently drifting apart. This is the betrayal of time. It presents itself as steady, fair, impartial. It lulls you into trust. But underneath, it is already bending, already dividing you from others, already weaving a reality in which no two lives are perfectly aligned. And if that feels strange, imagine scaling it up. Consider satellites orbiting Earth. Their clocks tick faster than ours because they are farther from gravity's pull. To keep your phone's GPS accurate, engineers must constantly correct for this difference. Without that correction, your map would betray you, your directions would scatter, your world would come undone in subtle ways. So when you ask if gravity bends time, the answer is not distant. It is not theoretical. It is in the phone in your pocket, in the directions you follow, in the coordinates that guide you home. Every time you trust that little blue dot on your screen, you are trusting the strangeness of bent time. And still, intuition fights back, because time doesn't feel bent. To you, it feels smooth, unwavering. You don't feel your seconds stretch or shrink. You don't feel your body divided into different rhythms. You don't feel the satellites overhead aging faster than you. But that is the deepest paradox of all. You live in a world where time bends, but you cannot sense it. You live in a reality where gravity warps the very rhythm of your life, but you only ever experience the illusion of constancy. It is like standing inside a vast, curved hall of mirrors and seeing only your own reflection, never realizing that the walls around you are bent. The bends are there, undeniable, but invisible from within. And maybe that's what makes it hardest to accept. Because if something so fundamental as time can bend without your noticing, then how many other illusions are you living inside? How much of what you call reality is only the surface of a deeper, stranger truth? Pause here, let that question linger, because this is the real breaking of intuition, not just about time, but about trust. You trusted your senses, you trusted your experience, and they betrayed you. Now you are forced to live with two truths at once. The truth of experience, where time feels steady, and the truth of reality, where time bends under gravity's hand. Both are real, both are yours, and yet they cannot be reconciled. So what do you do with that? Some people resist. They retreat into denial, insisting that time must be universal, that the strangeness must be some trick of perspective or mathematics. Others embrace it with awe, letting the mystery deepen their sense of wonder. You don't have to choose yet. You only have to sit in the brokenness. You only have to accept that your old picture of time has been shattered, and no amount of wishing will glue it back together. Because the old picture of one universal time flowing equally for all was never true. It was a story you told yourself and a story your culture built into clocks, calendars, and routines. But the universe does not honor that story. It bends it, quietly, endlessly, always. And if you need one last push to break your intuition completely, consider this. Time bends not only differently across space, but differently across your own choices. Where you go, how you move, how close you draw to gravity, all of it changes the rhythm of your life. The time you live is not simply given to you. It is shaped by your path, which means that in some sense, you have already been writing your own time, bending it with every step, every choice, every motion you make. It means that time is not just something that happens to you. It is something you create, whether you realize it or not. And once you see that, there is no going back. This is the end of intuition. This is the moment when you finally let go of the comfort of a universal clock. You no longer cling to the illusion of fairness, of simultaneity, of shared now. You see the fractures, you feel the paradoxes, you accept the brokenness. And though it may unsettle you, though it may leave you dizzy, it also frees you. Because now you are ready for the truth itself. Now you are ready to see the evidence. It is one thing to let go of your intuition, to admit that time might bend, to imagine paradoxes and thought experiments where the seconds slip apart. But a question still lingers in you like a stone at the bottom of a river. How do we know? Because imagination is not enough. The human mind is clever, yes, but it is also deceptive. It can invent 1,000 strange scenarios, but invention does not make them real. To believe that gravity bends time, you want proof, solid, careful, undeniable proof. And here is where the story sharpens. Because the bending of time has been measured, not only in distant galaxies, not only near black holes, but here on Earth in experiments you can touch. The first proof came not from grand machines, but from the simplest of tools, clocks. Think back to the 20th century, when physicists began to test Einstein's predictions. They carried precise atomic clocks, devices so accurate they could lose or gain only a fraction of a second over millions of years, up mountains, into airplanes, into orbit. They compared them against identical clocks left behind on the ground. And what did they find? They found the clocks disagreed, not by much, not by enough for you to notice with your eyes or ears, but enough to measure. The clocks on airplanes moving swiftly and lifted higher against gravity ticked differently than those that remained on the ground. The clocks in orbit circling above us ticked faster than those at sea level, and when the clocks were brought back together, the difference remained. Their lives had diverged. This was no trick of machinery, no fault in engineering. It was the signature of bent time itself. Pause with that for a moment. Imagine holding two clocks in your hands, perfectly synchronized, identical. You separate them, send one away, keep one close. When you bring them back together, you expect reunion, harmony, a single rhythm once more, but instead they disagree. They will never tick in perfect unison again. What does that mean? It means that time itself has written two different stories, two different lives. The first cracks in intuition had become measurable scars, and yet these experiments were only the beginning. The deeper proof comes from the sky itself. Look up at the stars. Their light is not only beautiful, it is testimony. Light leaving the surface of a star must climb out of gravity's grip, and as it climbs, its color stretches, its frequency lowers. This is called gravitational redshift, and it is the visible signature of bent time. Why? Because the frequency of light is bound to the ticking of time at its source. A faster clock, a slower clock, will imprint itself on the light it emits. When that light reaches you, its shift reveals the bending of time at the star it came from. So every time you look at starlight, you are looking at bent time made visible. You are looking at gravity's hand stretching the seconds until they sing in a lower pitch. Still, maybe you want more, something closer, something undeniable. Fine, imagine a tower. At the top you place an atomic clock, at the bottom you place another. They are only separated by a few stories, perhaps the height of a building. You run them together and wait. And even here, even over such a tiny difference, the clocks diverge. The one at the bottom, deeper in gravity's pull, ticks more slowly than the one at the top. Time itself runs differently, just meters apart. This is not theory. This has been done, repeated, measured again and again. The result is always the same: time bends. And then there is GPS, the everyday miracle that depends on bent time. Satellites orbiting high above Earth live in weaker gravity, so their clocks tick faster than ours. If left uncorrected, their signals would drift. In just a single day, your GPS location would be off by kilometers. You would be lost in your own city. The fact that your phone guides you accurately is proof that time bends, and that engineers have built this strangeness into the fabric of your technology. So the evidence piles up. Clocks carried on airplanes, clocks lifted in towers, starlight stretched in its climb, satellites corrected in orbit. Every piece says the same thing. Gravity bends time. It is not imagination, it is not philosophy, it is fact. And yet, even with all this proof, you might still feel uneasy. You might still resist, because the problem is not believing the evidence, it is believing the consequences. Because if time bends here in the quiet spaces of Earth, what happens when you push further? What happens when you look to black holes, to neutron stars, to the edges of the universe itself? The evidence will carry you there. But before it does, let's pause with the simplicity. Picture two clocks again, identical side by side. You separate them, place one at the top of a mountain, one at the bottom. Wait, when you compare them again, they disagree. One has lived more seconds than the other. That is the universe whispering its truth to you, not in abstractions, not in paradoxes, but in the quiet betrayal of machines that count time more faithfully than we ever could. And what the universe whispers is this: there is no one time, no one rhythm, no one now. There are only many. The story of bent time begins quietly, with clocks on airplanes, with tiny differences measured in laboratories and towers. But the farther you look, the more undeniable it becomes, because the sky itself is a stage where time bends in plain sight if only you know how to look. Imagine the early 20th century. Astronomers gather for an eclipse, waiting for the moon to block the blazing light of the sun. Why? Because Einstein has made a daring prediction. If gravity bends space, then the light of stars passing near the sun should curve as well. The eclipse gives them a chance to test this. The moment arrives. The stars near the sun's edge shift, their light bent by the pull of solar gravity. The photographs show it. The universe behaves exactly as Einstein said it would. Space is curved, and if space is curved, time woven with it must also bend. This was one of the first grand confirmations of relativity. Not just math, not just theory, but the sky itself bending under the hand of gravity. But the story does not end there, because the universe is filled with clocks far more precise than any we can build. Stars themselves, pulsars. A pulsar is the collapsed remnant of a massive star, spinning with such astonishing speed and precision that its pulses arrive on Earth like the ticks of a perfect cosmic clock. These pulses are so regular they can outdo our best atomic machines, and when a pulsar orbits near another massive object, its ticks reveal the bending of time. Astronomers have watched these systems for decades. They've seen the rhythm shift, the seconds stretch, the timing bend under the pull of gravity. These are not human experiments, not fragile machines in towers, but the universe itself keeping time and showing us how gravity reshapes it. Think about that, stars spinning hundreds of times a second, their beams sweeping across the cosmos like lighthouse lights. Every pulse every second a truth, and yet those truths bend when gravity intervenes. Time itself slows in their embrace. And then there are black holes, the great catastrophes of space-time. The bending of time near them is so extreme it becomes almost impossible to speak of seconds at all. Imagine standing near one as we did before, feeling time flow normally while the universe outside rushes ahead. Or imagine watching from afar, seeing someone else slow to a crawl as they approach the horizon. Both experiences are true. Both are evidence that time is not universal, not absolute, but fragile, pliable, bent to the will of gravity. For decades, black holes were only theory, but then came the ultimate evidence, gravitational waves. In 2015, detectors on Earth, massive L-shaped instruments stretching kilometers across, felt the faintest shiver. Two black holes billions of light-years away had collided. The collision sent ripples through spacetime itself, waves that spread outward like the echo of a stone dropped into water. These waves passed through Earth, compressing and stretching time and space as they went. Pause there, because that moment matters. For the first time, humanity detected the bending of time not as a concept, not as an inference, but as a vibration we could feel. A literal shiver in the fabric of reality, moving through you and me and everything around us. Time was not steady in that moment. It stretched and compressed, however slightly, as the waves rolled by. This is not poetry, it is fact. The bending of time has been recorded, etched into the data of detectors built by human hands. And yet, even now, the strangeness doesn't end. Because the more you look, the more the evidence multiplies. Astronomers studying galaxies see light stretched into redshifts, slowed by gravity as it climbs out of deep wells. Space probes sent to other planets must account for times bending in their calculations, or they would miss their marks by thousands of kilometers. Even communication signals sent to Mars must adjust for relativity, because time does not flow the same for a satellite circling Earth as it does for a probe orbiting the red planet. Everywhere you look, time bends. The universe is soaked with the evidence. But maybe you're wondering something else now. Maybe you're asking, if we know this so well, if the evidence is so overwhelming, why does it still feel so impossible? Why does it still break me to think of it? The answer is simple, because your intuition was built for survival, not truth. Your body evolved to notice the immediate, the practical. To you, seconds feel steady because they need to feel steady. If you lived your life constantly aware of time's bending, you would collapse into paralysis. You would question every heartbeat, every step, every word. So the illusion of constancy is a mercy. It keeps you moving. It allows you to live as though time is smooth, even while reality whispers otherwise. But in quiet moments like this, you can lift the veil. You can let the strangeness in. You can feel the weight of the evidence pressing against your certainty, forcing you to admit, yes, time bends. Not sometimes, not far away, not in extremes, always, everywhere. Your phone proves it, the stars prove it, the detectors that feel space-time itself trembling prove it. And once you admit it, the world changes. Look again at the night sky. Those stars are not only distant, they are ancient. Their light has traveled for thousands, millions, even billions of years, but not all those years were equal. Each photon of light has climbed through different wells of gravity, stretched by different bends of time. By the time that light reaches you, it carries a record of bent seconds across the universe. Every star you see is telling you a story of time that is not your own. And perhaps this is the most haunting evidence of all. The sky above you is not a photograph of the present, but a gallery of fractured times, each one bent differently, stitched together into a tapestry you call the night. You stand beneath it, believing you are in one now, but the truth is you are surrounded by countless nows, layered across distance and gravity and time itself. And yet it feels beautiful, doesn't it? The brokenness, the strangeness, the undeniable evidence. It doesn't make the world smaller. It makes it deeper. It makes every second of your life feel like part of something vast, pliable, alive. Because time bends, it always has. And now you know beyond doubt that it is true. You've seen the cosmic stage. Black holes swallowing light, pulsars ticking in silence across galaxies. The sky itself stretching under gravity's pull. But maybe you still wonder, what does any of this have to do with me? Because you don't live near a black hole, you don't time your life by pulsars, you don't build detectors the size of cities to feel space-time tremble. You live here on Earth with mornings and evenings, with commutes and grocery lists, with seconds that feel steady no matter what physics says. So why should the bending of time matter to you? Because it already does, quietly, invisibly, every day. Let's begin with something simple, your GPS. You know it as the calm blue dot on your phone's map, guiding you down unfamiliar streets, warning you when to turn. But hidden inside that convenience is a delicate dance of bent time. Each satellite orbiting Earth carries atomic clocks, counting seconds with exquisite precision. But because they circle high above Earth's surface, farther from gravity's grip, their clocks tick faster than yours on the ground. If engineers ignored this, if they pretended time flowed evenly, the GPS system would collapse. Your location would drift by kilometers in a single day. You would never find your way again. Instead, the system is constantly corrected, adjusted for the bending of time. Every journey you take with the aid of that blue dot is built on relativity. Without Einstein, without the acceptance that gravity bends time, you would be lost. So the question, can gravity bend time, isn't abstract. You are already living in its answer. But the proof doesn't stop with satellites. It reaches into every signal, every beam of communication sent across space. When scientists send messages to distant spacecraft, Voyager drifting at the edge of the solar system, probes circling Mars, they must adjust for the fact that time flows differently depending on where the craft is, how fast it moves, and how deep it sits in gravity's pull. Without those corrections, the signals would drift, the commands would miss, the missions would fail. So even the words we fling into space carry with them the acknowledgement that time bends. And still, the evidence comes closer. Imagine two atomic clocks again, one placed at sea level, one just a few floors higher in a tall building. They tick at different rates. This has been tested again and again. The difference is small, invisible to your senses, but measurable with absolute precision. And think about what that means. A few floors, a few meters. That is enough for time itself to split into slightly different flows. So when you walk up a hill, when you climb a flight of stairs, when you rise from your chair to stand tall, your seconds shift. You are, in that moment, aging at a different rate than you were a moment before. You will never feel it, never notice it, but it is true. And that truth means your life is not what you thought. You believed you shared a steady, universal present with everyone around you. but the evidence says otherwise. Every person you pass is living their own rhythm, their own slightly bent thread of time. No two lives tick alike. This is not theory, it is measurement, it is fact. And perhaps that realization makes you uneasy. Perhaps it leaves you dizzy, as though the ground you stand on is shifting beneath you, but sit with it, because dizziness can also be wonder. Think about what it means that no two people have ever lived in the exact same flow of time. Even twins born in the same moment, raised in the same house, sleeping in beds side by side, one will be slightly higher, one slightly lower, one closer to Earth's center of gravity, one farther away. Their clocks will disagree, their lives will drift. From the moment of birth, their times are already separate. And if that is true for twins, it is true for everyone. For lovers holding hands, for parents and children, for friends sharing a laugh. No two hearts beat in perfect synchrony. No two lives flow in perfect step. But instead of breaking you, maybe that truth softens you. Maybe it makes you see how fragile, how precious each connection really is. Because every shared moment is an approximation, a weaving together of fractured times into something that feels whole. Love, friendship, laughter, these are not about sameness. They are about harmony in the face of difference. And gravity itself is what creates the difference. Now zoom out again. Think of airplanes crossing the sky, passengers sipping coffee as their seconds drift differently from those of people on the ground. Think of satellites orbiting, their clocks racing ahead of ours. Think of astronauts on the International Space Station, aging slightly differently than their families below. All of this has been measured. All of this is true. The bending of time is not a theory waiting for proof. It is a truth already woven into our technology, into our communications, into our science, into our daily lives. And still, the evidence deepens. Astronomers studying galaxies watch light stretch as it escapes the pull of gravity, revealing time slowed at its source. Scientists measuring muons, tiny particles created in the upper atmosphere, see them live longer than they should, their lifespans stretched by the relativistic bending of time as they race toward Earth. Even the atoms in your body whisper the truth. Their energy levels shift in tiny but measurable ways depending on the gravity they feel. Time bends not in theory, not in imagination, but in every experiment, every measurement, every observation. And once you accept that, the world you live in begins to shimmer with new meaning. The tower clock ticking on the corner, the watch wrapped around your wrist, the satellites orbiting above, the starlight falling into your eyes, all of them are fractured, all of them slightly out of sync, all of them living in bent time. And yet, you never notice. You live as though time is steady, universal, unbroken. You live as though your seconds are the same as mine. And maybe that is the most beautiful illusion of all. Because without it, you might never love, never share, never believe you are together with anyone at all. But beneath the illusion, the evidence speaks. It speaks through clocks, through stars, through particles, through satellites. It speaks with one voice, one truth. Gravity bends time. Always, everywhere. And now you know it beyond doubt. By now the evidence has piled high. Clock by clock, star by star, signal by signal. Each one whispering the same thing, gravity bends time. And you can feel it, can't you? The weight of it pressing down, making resistance harder and harder. Because at some point the pile becomes too heavy to ignore. You began with doubt, with intuition that clung to constancy, with the comfort of one steady rhythm. But evidence is relentless. It builds, it layers, it refuses to let go. And now you find yourself standing in the middle of something undeniable. Let's gather it all together. Start small, clocks in towers, clocks carried up mountains, clocks flown in airplanes, all diverging, all refusing to reunite perfectly. Even a difference of a few meters is enough for time to bend, to split, to fracture into slightly different rhythms. Then satellites, orbiting high, their seconds racing ahead of ours. Engineers forced to acknowledge relativity just to keep your blue dot true. Without corrections for bent time, every GPS map would unravel. Every journey would fall into error. Then spacecraft signals sent across the void, each one distorted if not corrected for gravity's hand. Plans to Mars would drift. Probes at the edge of the solar system would vanish from our calculations. The exploration of space itself would collapse without the acknowledgement that time bends. Then starlight, the quiet redshift, the stretching of color as photons climb from gravity's wells. Every telescope on Earth, every astronomer scanning the night sky sees the evidence written into the light itself. Stars tell us, galaxies tell us, the universe itself tells us, time does not flow evenly. Then pulsars, the great cosmic clocks, spinning remnants of collapsed stars. Their beams sweep across the cosmos with precision unmatched by any human instrument. And yet, even their perfect ticks bend when caught in the pull of gravity. The universe itself keeps time and its rhythm is warped. Then black holes, the monsters at the edge of understanding. Near them time slows so much it almost halts, leaving observers to disagree forever about what has happened when it happened, if it happened at all. These are not abstractions. We have seen their shadows. We have measured their mergers in the vibrations of space-time itself. And finally, gravitational waves. The trembling of reality as black holes collide, rippling outward, stretching and compressing space and time as they move. Humanity has felt them faint but real, a literal shiver in the seconds of your life. One by one the proofs stack, each one enough to challenge you, together overwhelming. And yet the strangest part is not the evidence itself, but its harmony, because all of it points the same way. The clocks, the satellites, the starlight, the pulsars, the black holes, the waves, they do not contradict each other. They agree. They sing the same song in different voices from different corners of the cosmos. That song says time is not steady, time bends, always, everywhere. You might ask why so many experiments, why so many tests, isn't one enough? But science does not work with one. Science builds its case like a cathedral, stone upon stone, each one tested, each one fitting into place. The bending of time has become that kind of cathedral, vast, solid, impossible to knock down. And you can feel the weight of it now. It is no longer a strange idea, no longer a thought experiment. It is truth, measured, proven, undeniable truth. But here's where the wonder deepens. Because the evidence does not only prove that time bends, it proves something more haunting, that you live inside illusions, that the seconds you feel steady and universal are not reality but perception, that what you trust most deeply, your sense of now, is not absolute. Every experiment, every piece of data whispers the same unsettling message. Your intuition was never designed to reveal the truth. It was designed to keep you steady, to keep you alive. Truth is stranger, deeper, harder. And maybe that realization leaves you feeling small. Maybe it leaves you feeling betrayed. But it doesn't need to. Because in the end, what these experiments reveal is not that you are broken, but that the universe is richer than you knew. Think of it this way. When you look at a rainbow, you see colors, beautiful, vivid, arranged in an arc across the sky. But the rainbow is not the whole story. Beyond the red, there are invisible wavelengths of infrared. Beyond the violet, ultraviolet, you don't see them, but they are there. Your eyes give you the illusion of completeness, but the truth is bigger. Time is like that. You live inside the rainbow of time that you can feel, steady seconds, equal for all. But beyond that lies the invisible spectrum, the bending, the warping, the shifting under gravity. And once you know it, you cannot unsee it. This is what the evidence has given you, a glimpse of the fuller spectrum of time. A reminder that your life, your seconds, are part of something vast and pliable. But even as the evidence piles up, you may still feel resistance. Somewhere inside you, a whisper says, "It can't be, not really. It can't be true that my time is different from yours, that my head and my feet tick at different rhythms, that the universe is stitched from bent seconds." That whisper will not go away easily, which is why the next step matters. Because science does not only prove things, it also invites counter-arguments, skepticism, doubt. The bending of time has been challenged, resisted, questioned at every turn. And those challenges are worth listening to, not because they succeed, but because they sharpen our understanding of what is true. So in the next breath, we will hear those counter voices. We will face the resistance. We will listen to the arguments that time cannot bend, that gravity is only force, that the illusion of constancy must be real. And then we will see why they fail. But for now, let yourself rest in the weight of the evidence. Feel the cathedral of proof rising around you, stone upon stone. Look at the sky, the stars, the satellites, the detectors, the clocks, and know that they all say the same thing. Gravity bends time. You are living inside that truth, always, everywhere. And the weight of it will never let you go. You have walked far already. You have seen the evidence stack up, stone upon stone, until the weight of it pressed against your doubts. You've stood in the cathedral of proof, surrounded by clocks, by satellites, by the light of stars, all whispering the same thing: gravity bends time. And yet, perhaps you feel it even now, the whisper of resistance hasn't gone away. That small voice in your chest that says, "But surely it can't be so strange. Surely time must still be steady deep down. Surely these experiments, these adjustments, these equations, surely they are tricks of perspective, quirks of machinery, misunderstandings dressed up as revelation." That voice matters, because science itself is not the silencing of doubt, but its careful tending. Every theory worth holding has survived questions sharp enough to cut it open. And relativity, the idea that time bends, has been questioned more fiercely than most. So let's give doubt its stage. Let's let it speak. I begin with the simplest resistance: I don't feel it. You live your days as though time is smooth, steady, impartial. You rise in the morning, you count the hours, you watch the sun set. Your heart beats, your breath flows, your body ages in a rhythm that feels consistent. You've never once stood on a mountaintop and felt your seconds quicken, never once descended into a canyon and felt them slow. If time really bends, why is it invisible to you? That question is not foolish, it's honest, and it stings, because the truth of bent time hides perfectly within your perception, offering you no cracks, no seams, no hints to betray it. You must accept it not by sight or touch, but by faith in measurement, in instruments more sensitive than your body. And maybe that feels unsatisfying. Maybe you want reality to announce itself, not whisper through machines. Now consider the second resistance. Maybe it's just the clocks. Clocks, after all, are human inventions. Fragile, dependent on mechanisms, on vibrations, on assumptions about what a second is. When scientists say clocks run faster or slower at different heights, couldn't that just be a flaw in the design? Maybe the machines are sensitive to altitude or to motion or to temperature, not to time itself. It would be comforting, wouldn't it, to believe that time is still universal and only our crude devices are failing to keep up. To think that the universe is steady and only our tools are fragile. And for a while that argument had weight. In the early years of relativity, skeptics leaned hard on it. They insisted the effect was mechanical, not fundamental. But as decades passed, the experiments became more precise, the machines more refined, until the differences could no longer be blamed on errors. Time itself had to be bending, or the universe was conspiring to trick every instrument we ever built. Still, the resistance lingers in the question: are we measuring time or only our clocks? Then comes the third resistance: maybe it's just motion, not gravity. Because relativity does not only say gravity bends time, it also says motion does. A fast-moving clock will run differently than a stationary one. Twin astronauts traveling near the speed of light will age differently than their siblings at home. This is called time dilation, and it is as real as the gravitational kind. So the skeptic might say, fine, maybe moving fast bends time, but why bring gravity into it? Maybe all those clocks on satellites are just moving quickly compared to us on the ground. Maybe their differences come from speed, not from gravity at all. This objection is tempting. It simplifies things. It avoids the messy idea of spacetime itself curving under weight. But it also fails because scientists know how to separate the effects. They can calculate the contribution of speed, subtract it, and still see gravity's hand at work. The satellite's clocks tick faster than Earth's not only because of motion, but because they sit higher in weaker gravity. Still, the doubt is understandable, because motion you can imagine, gravity bending time is harder. Finally, the deepest resistance of all: why should I care? Maybe you accept the science. Maybe you nod politely and agree that the experiments are sound, the measurements true. But still, a voice whispers, what difference does it make? My seconds feel the same. My life goes on. Why should I burden myself with the strangeness of bent time when the illusion of constancy is enough? This is the most human resistance of all. Not denial, not skepticism, but weariness, a quiet shrug. Because the truth is, you don't need to think about relativity to live your life. You don't need to wrestle with bent time to eat, to work, to love, to sleep. So why care? Pause there, let that question breathe. Because it reveals something important. Science doesn't only change how you measure the world, it changes how you imagine it. You care not because your survival depends on it, but because your sense of reality does. Because in the quiet of night, when you wonder what the universe really is, what your life really means, you don't want to live in illusions if you can help it. And so even the shrug, even the why care, is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of wonder. But before we get to wonder, we must honor resistance, because the history of relativity is also the history of disbelief. When Einstein first proposed his ideas, many scientists rejected them. Some insisted the mathematics was a trick. Others argued that his claims about time were absurd, impossible, untestable. Even after the eclipse confirmed the bending of starlight, skeptics lingered. Even after clocks betrayed their differences, doubters held on. And that history is worth remembering, because it means your own resistance, your own whisper of doubt is not foolish. It is natural, it is human. You are not alone in your hesitation. So let it linger, let it speak. Let yourself feel the pull of old intuition, the comfort of constancy, the desire for a simpler world where seconds are steady and shared. Because in the next step, we will see why those resistances fail. We will see why the evidence cannot be dismissed, why the cathedral of proof stands firm against every blow. But for now, stay here in the quiet of doubt, because it is in this quiet that science finds its strength. Not in the silence of questions, but in their noise. Not in the absence of doubt, but in its persistence. And here, in that persistence, you stand on the threshold, between the old comfort and the strange new truth, between the whisper of resistance and the weight of inevitability, between the world you thought you lived in and the world that is. You've heard the experiments, you felt the weight of the evidence, but let's be honest, a part of you is still clinging, a part of you is still muttering beneath the surface, "No, I don't believe it, not really, not in my bones." And that stubbornness matters, because common sense is not easily surrendered. It has carried you through your life like a trusted guide, whispering to you that apples fall downward, that the sun rises each morning, that a second is always a second. Common sense has earned your loyalty through 1,000 tiny victories. So why should you betray it now? That's the first counter case, loyalty. Loyalty to the sense of the world that has never failed you before. If you give that up, what are you left with? Equations you can't follow, measurements you can't personally test, trust in distant machines you'll never touch. You begin to feel it. The resistance is not only about science, it is about identity. To accept that gravity bends time is to admit that your intuition, your lived sense of the world, is wrong. And no one gives up their own experience easily. Imagine telling yourself, "My life has lied to me. My seconds have always been illusions." That thought hurts. It wounds the pride you've built by trusting your senses. It cuts into the faith you've carried in your own perception. And pride resists. So you reach for defenses. The first defense is dismissal. You tell yourself, yes, scientists say time bends, but their experiments are small, tiny differences, decimals of decimals. They don't matter. I'll never feel them. Why should I let something so invisible unseat what I know to be true? This is comforting. It lets you keep your common sense while nodding politely to science as though it were an eccentric guest at the table. You don't deny it outright, you just minimize it, push it to the margins. But deep down you know minimization is a fragile defense, because tiny differences over long enough spans become vast. 1 billion years of bent time can change the fate of galaxies. And even here on Earth, those tiny differences already guide your phone, your flights, your communication. You live inside them. To dismiss them is to pretend you can step outside the web you are woven into. Still, you cling. Another defense rises, metaphor. You say, fine, maybe gravity bends time, but isn't that just a way of speaking? Maybe scientists use the word bend because it makes the math prettier. Maybe nothing truly bends, maybe it's just language. This too is comforting. It lets you keep your world solid while pretending that bending time is a poet's flourish, not a physical truth. But again, the comfort falters, because gravitational redshift is not metaphor. Gravitational time dilation is not metaphor. The signals, the clocks, the pulsars, they do not play games with language. They reveal a physical shift, a real divergence. Words are weak approximations of what actually happens. And then comes the defense that is not defense at all, but rebellion. You throw up your hands and say, "No, I don't buy it. I refuse. Time is time, gravity is gravity, and no amount of experiment will take away the truth of my own senses." This is pure stubbornness. It is the digging in of heels. It is the survival instinct of common sense, unwilling to die. And maybe that rebellion feels noble, like protecting something primal against the invasion of abstract science. But it also leaves you stranded, because rebellion doesn't resolve the contradiction, it just buries it. The evidence doesn't vanish, the experiments don't disappear, the universe doesn't bend itself back into the shape you demand. You can close your eyes, but the truth remains. And perhaps you feel it then, the deeper fear behind the resistance. If I admit this, what else must I admit? Because if time itself is pliable, then nothing is absolute. Not space, not motion, not simultaneity. The entire foundation you've built your understanding of reality on begins to feel unstable. The house tilts, the ground shifts. You fear that if you let this one truth in, everything else will unravel. That fear is real, but it is also misplaced. Because admitting that time bends does not destroy reality, it deepens it. The ground does not vanish, it only reveals its layers. Still, the fear lingers, and so the resistance holds. Maybe you try another tactic. Isn't this all too complicated? The universe can't possibly work this way. Surely reality is simpler than bent time, curved space, paradoxes upon paradoxes. Surely nature would prefer elegance over chaos. But here too you stumble, because what you call complicated is not complicated to the universe. It is simply how it is, and what you call simple is only what feels comfortable to you. Reality has never owed you simplicity. So the defenses crumble one by one. Dismissal fails, metaphor fails, rebellion fails, simplicity fails. But still your heart resists, not because the evidence is weak, but because it is strong. Not because the idea of bent time is false, but because it is true, and truth this strange is difficult to live with. So you stand here in the tension, on one side the cathedral of proof, on the other the stubbornness of common sense. And the question hangs between them, which will you trust? It is not a question science can answer for you. Science can only offer the data, the experiments, the equations, the leap, the surrender of intuition. That leap is yours alone. And that is why we linger here inside the resistance. Because surrendering to truth is not instant. It takes time. It takes wrestling. It takes breaking and breaking again until something new grows in place of the old. So let yourself resist. Let yourself grumble and cling. Let yourself mutter, "No, it can't be, not really." Because soon the resistance will have nowhere left to hide. And then you will be free. You have heard the stubborn voice of common sense. Time is time, steady and fair. You have heard the muttering of pride, "I won't surrender my senses to some invisible math." You have even felt the rebellion, "No, I refuse." But resistance runs deeper than individuals. It is not only your own intuition that balks at bent time. Whole cultures, whole philosophies, whole religions have built themselves on the assumption that time is universal. To question that is to shake their foundations. And so the resistance is not only scientific, it is existential. Think first of religion. For thousands of years, people have spoken of eternity as though it were a straight road, a timeless stream beyond the mortal world. They have imagined beginnings and endings in terms of time itself, creation at one end, judgment at the other. They have prayed to gods who move outside of time, or gods who shape time, or gods who guarantee the fairness of time. If time bends, what happens to eternity? If seconds stretch and shrink under gravity's hand, what becomes of the idea that all souls move through the same river toward the same shore? If now itself fractures, how can we speak of divine moments of timeless truth? Resistance arises here not from pride, but from fear, that bent time makes the universe feel less sacred, less stable, less fair. Then think of philosophy. For centuries, philosophers argued over whether time was real or an illusion, whether it was absolute or relative, whether it flowed on its own or was only a measure of motion. Newton imagined time as universal, steady, a grand backdrop against which all events played. Leibniz argued differently, that time was only the relation between things, but even so, both believed in coherence. Both believed in something absolute behind the experience. Einstein shattered that. He said, time is part of the fabric, time bends, time depends. For philosophers who had built arguments on absolutes, this was an earthquake. If time itself is relative, then truth itself begins to feel unstable. And then think of culture, the everyday ways we live. Our calendars, our clocks, our language, they all lean on the assumption that seconds are the same everywhere, that hours are hours, that now is shared. The 9 o'clock train leaves at 9 for everyone. Midnight strikes the same for all in the city. We build our lives on schedules, on shared time, on the fairness of minutes. But relativity whispers that this is illusion, that my 9 o'clock and your 9 o'clock are never perfectly the same, that the train's clock and the station's clock will always drift apart, that every schedule is, in a quiet way, a lie we tell ourselves for the sake of harmony. And here comes the unease. If time is not absolute, then what happens to meaning? Because so much of meaning depends on time, you remember your childhood as though it were a straight line behind you. You imagine your future as though it were a straight line ahead. You trust that your life is a story, unfolding in one rhythm, moving with you toward an end. But if time bends, then your story is not as steady as you thought. Its rhythm is not your own alone. It is shaped by gravity, by motion, by the very structure of the universe. The idea of one life, one rhythm, one personal timeline, that idea fractures. And resistance hardens. It says, no, I need time to be steady. I need my story to make sense. I cannot live in a world where my seconds are fragile, where my life is bent by forces I cannot feel. This resistance is not foolish. It is human. It is the cry for coherence, for fairness, for meaning. Even scientists have felt it. In the early days of relativity, many refused to accept Einstein's claims. They clung to Newton's absolutes not only because the old equations worked well, but because the old worldview was comforting. A steady universe, a steady time, a stage that never bends, that was a cosmos you could trust. Einstein's universe, alive and pliable, felt unstable, untrustworthy, even dangerous. The resistance was so fierce that entire careers were built on trying to disprove relativity. Some physicists spent decades hunting for cracks, insisting that bent time was illusion, that the mathematics hid some deeper truth of constancy. They failed, but their persistence reveals how hard it is to surrender the old view. And perhaps you feel that same persistence in yourself, a need to keep time simple, absolute, shared. Because if you accept relativity fully, you must also accept the dissolution of now. You must admit that the present is not universal, that my present and your present are not the same, that the cosmos does not contain one moment but many. This is almost unbearable. To live without a shared now feels like living without togetherness, without intimacy, without meaning. And so resistance clings. It clings in religion, where eternity demands absolutes. It clings in philosophy, where truth demands coherence. It clings in culture, where calendars demand synchronization. It clings in the human heart, where stories demand rhythm. And yet the evidence does not bend to that resistance. The universe does not conform to our need for absolutes. The clocks still drift, the stars still stretch their light, the satellites still tick faster than us. The black holes still slow time to a crawl. So what happens when resistance collides with evidence? This is the true crisis, because to admit the evidence is to unseat entire worldviews. It is to say, the universe is stranger than my religion said, stranger than my philosophy assumed, stranger than my culture pretended, stranger than my heart desired. That is why bent time is not easy to accept, not because the science is weak, it isn't, but because the meaning is heavy. And so you linger here in the weight of worldviews. You feel the pull of absolutes on one side, the tug of evidence on the other. You want to believe both, but you cannot. The two worlds cannot be reconciled. Something must give, but not yet, because before you let go of the old, you must feel its pull completely. You must honor the resistance that lives in your culture, in your history, in your heart. You must acknowledge the voice that says, time must be steady or nothing means anything. And only then, only after that voice has spoken fully, can you finally let it go. By now, resistance has spoken in many voices. You've heard doubt, I don't feel it. You've heard stubbornness, I won't surrender my senses. You've heard philosophy and culture, without absolute time, how can stories, truths, and meanings survive? But resistance is not ready to die yet. It has one more voice, one final stand. This voice is not small, it is not quiet, it is defiant. It looks at all the evidence, all the clocks, all the satellites, all the starlight, and it says, I refuse. It says, you cannot take away what feels real to me. You cannot tell me that my seconds are illusions. You cannot demand that I give up the one thing that has always been steady in my life, the ticking of time. This is the last defense, the final wall. It is not about experiments or equations, it is about survival. Because to admit that gravity bends time is to live in a world where nothing is absolute, and human beings crave absolutes. They are anchors in a sea of uncertainty. They are the pillars we cling to when the waves rise. Time, universal and fair, was one of those anchors. To give it up feels like being cast adrift. So the last stand of certainty is simple. I don't care what the evidence says. Time is steady. It has to be steady. Otherwise, how could I live? And maybe you feel the pull of that argument. Maybe you sympathize with it. Because it's true, your life feels impossible to live if you constantly remember that your seconds are fractured, your present is local, your story is bent. You cannot raise a family, hold a job, fall in love, or drift to sleep if you are always haunted by the relativity of your own moments. So resistance insists, I will live by what I feel, not by what I'm told. I will live inside the illusion because the illusion is kinder. And in a way, that argument has strength. It explains why most of us go about our lives without thinking of relativity at all. It explains why we can believe in bent time at an intellectual level but still live as though it isn't true. It explains why resistance never truly dies, even in the face of overwhelming proof. But even this final wall has cracks, because to insist that time must be steady, because otherwise life would be unbearable, is not really an argument about the universe. It is an argument about comfort, about what you want reality to be, not about what reality is. And reality has never bent itself to human comfort. Apples fall whether you want them to or not. Lightning strikes whether you're ready or not. Stars burn out and galaxies collide, indifferent to your longing for permanence. The universe is not built to soothe you, it is built to be what it is. So when resistance makes its last stand, I refuse, I won't surrender, I need time to be steady, the universe remains unmoved, the clocks still disagree, the satellites still drift, the starlight still stretches, the waves of spacetime still ripple through the detectors. The universe does not argue, it only reveals. And here is where resistance begins to weaken. Because deep down, you know that clinging to illusion does not make it true. Deep down, you know that refusing to believe in bent time does not stop it from shaping your life. Deep down, you know that survival is not built on denial but on adaptation. So even as resistance raises its voice, even as it declares its final stand, something inside you begins to soften. Something inside you begins to wonder, what if letting go of certainty doesn't destroy me? What if it frees me? And maybe that's the most frightening thought of all. That surrender is not death but transformation. That giving up the illusion of steady time could open a deeper, richer way of living in the universe. But resistance is not ready to admit that yet. It has one more card to play. It says, even if time bends, it doesn't matter to me. My seconds feel steady, my life feels whole, my story feels real. Why should I trade the comfort of my experience for the strangeness of a truth I cannot feel? And that argument too has power, because comfort matters, experience matters. Illusion or not, the feeling of steady time is what gets you through the day. But here is the quiet answer: you don't have to trade. You can live inside the comfort of experience while also knowing the deeper truth. You can let the illusion carry you, but without clinging to it as absolute. You can allow yourself to feel steady while also remembering, in quiet moments like this one, that the universe is stranger than you sense. And once you see that, resistance falters, because its last defense, the demand for comfort, turns out to be unnecessary. You don't lose comfort by accepting bent time, you only lose the illusion of absolutes, and in return you gain wonder. Still, we should honor the resistance, even in its collapse, because it has served a purpose. It has slowed you down, forced you to wrestle, prevented you from rushing into acceptance too easily. Resistance is what makes acceptance meaningful. Without the struggle, the surrender would be shallow. So let resistance speak one last time. Let it shout, let it rage, let it cling. Let it cry out for absolutes, for simplicity, for fairness. Let it make its last stand. And then let it fall silent. Because silence is what comes next. The silence of realization, the silence of surrender, the silence of a new world opening before you. In that silence, the cathedral of evidence still stands. The universe still hums with bent time. Your seconds are still fractured, your present still local, your story still pliable. Nothing has changed except you. You are ready now. Ready to step past resistance. Ready to see synthesis. Ready to live inside the strange, beautiful truth of a universe where gravity bends time. By now, resistance has spoken in many voices. You've heard doubt, I don't feel it. You've heard stubbornness, I won't surrender my senses. You've heard philosophy and culture, without absolute time, how can stories, truths, and meanings survive? But resistance is not ready to die yet. It has one more voice, one final stand. This voice is not small, it is not quiet, it is defiant. It looks at all the evidence, all the clocks, all the satellites, all the starlight, and it says, I refuse. It says, you cannot take away what feels real to me. You cannot tell me that my seconds are illusions. You cannot demand that I give up the one thing that has always been steady in my life, the ticking of time. This is the last defense, the final wall. It is not about experiments or equations, it is about survival. Because to admit that gravity bends time is to live in a world where nothing is absolute, and human beings crave absolutes. They are anchors in a sea of uncertainty. They are the pillars we cling to when the waves rise. Time, universal and fair, was one of those anchors. To give it up feels like being cast adrift. So the last stand of certainty is simple. I don't care what the evidence says. Time is steady. It has to be steady. Otherwise, how could I live? And maybe you feel the pull of that argument. Maybe you sympathize with it. Because it's true, your life feels impossible to live if you constantly remember that your seconds are fractured, your present is local, your story is bent. You cannot raise a family, hold a job, fall in love, or drift to sleep if you are always haunted by the relativity of your own moments. So resistance insists, I will live by what I feel, not by what I'm told. I will live inside the illusion because the illusion is kinder. And in a way, that argument has strength. It explains why most of us go about our lives without thinking of relativity at all. It explains why we can believe in bent time at an intellectual level but still live as though it isn't true. It explains why resistance never truly dies, even in the face of overwhelming proof. But even this final wall has cracks, because to insist that time must be steady, because otherwise life would be unbearable, is not really an argument about the universe. It is an argument about comfort, about what you want reality to be, not about what reality is. And reality has never bent itself to human comfort. Apples fall whether you want them to or not. Lightning strikes whether you're ready or not. Stars burn out and galaxies collide, indifferent to your longing for permanence. The universe is not built to soothe you, it is built to be what it is. So when resistance makes its last stand, I refuse, I won't surrender, I need time to be steady, the universe remains unmoved, the clocks still disagree, the satellites still drift, the starlight still stretches, the waves of spacetime still ripple through the detectors. The universe does not argue, it only reveals. And here is where resistance begins to weaken. Because deep down, you know that clinging to illusion does not make it true. Deep down, you know that refusing to believe in bent time does not stop it from shaping your life. Deep down, you know that survival is not built on denial but on adaptation. So even as resistance raises its voice, even as it declares its final stand, something inside you begins to soften. Something inside you begins to wonder, what if letting go of certainty doesn't destroy me? What if it frees me? And maybe that's the most frightening thought of all, that surrender is not death but transformation, that giving up the illusion of steady time could open a deeper, richer way of living in the universe. But resistance is not ready to admit that yet. It has one more card to play. It says, even if time bends, it doesn't matter to me. My seconds feel steady, my life feels whole, my story feels real. Why should I trade the comfort of my experience for the strangeness of a truth I cannot feel? And that argument too has power, because comfort matters, experience matters. Illusion or not, the feeling of steady time is what gets you through the day. But here is the quiet answer: you don't have to trade. You can live inside the comfort of experience while also knowing the deeper truth. You can let the illusion carry you, but without clinging to it as absolute. You can allow yourself to feel steady while also remembering, in quiet moments like this one, that the universe is stranger than you sense. And once you see that, resistance falters, because its last defense, the demand for comfort, turns out to be unnecessary. You don't lose comfort by accepting bent time, you only lose the illusion of absolutes, and in return you gain wonder. Still, we should honor the resistance, even in its collapse, because it has served a purpose. It has slowed you down, forced you to wrestle, prevented you from rushing into acceptance too easily. Resistance is what makes acceptance meaningful. Without the struggle, the surrender would be shallow. So let resistance speak one last time. Let it shout, let it rage, let it cling. Let it cry out for absolutes, for simplicity, for fairness. Let it make its last stand. And then let it fall silent. Because silence is what comes next. The silence of realization. The silence of surrender, the silence of a new world opening before you. In that silence, the cathedral of evidence still stands. The universe still hums with bent time. Your seconds are still fractured, your present still local, your story still pliable. Nothing has changed except you. You are ready now, ready to step past resistance, ready to see synthesis, ready to live inside the strange, beautiful truth of a universe where gravity bends time. You are beginning to see it now. The fear that time's bending would strip life of meaning is softening. The resistance that clung to constancy has loosened its grip, and in its place, something larger is rising. A sense that the bending of time is not a betrayal but a revelation. So let's widen the frame. You began this journey by asking, can gravity bend time? At first the question felt narrow, almost like a trick, but now you see it differently. The answer is not simply yes. The answer is that gravity bending time is the thread that ties you to the cosmos itself. Because the truth is this: your seconds and the seconds of galaxies are shaped by the same fabric. The same bending that makes a clock on a mountain tick faster than one at sea level is the bending that curves the paths of stars around black holes. The same relativity that forces GPS satellites to adjust their signals is the relativity that governs the dance of galaxies across billions of light years. Your life is not separate from this fabric, it is woven into it. Pause here, let that sink in. You sitting here, breathing quietly, counting seconds that feel steady, are part of the same bending that sculpts the fate of the universe. And perhaps this changes the way you see your life. Because once you accept bent time, you stop imagining your life as a small story running on a tiny, local clock. You start to see it as a curve inside the grand fabric of space-time itself. Your heartbeat is not just a rhythm of biology. It is a rhythm stitched into the cosmos. Every step you take, every choice you make, bends your personal thread through space-time in its own unique way, and no one else's thread is exactly the same. This is what Einstein's revolution gave us, Not just equations, not just predictions, but a new picture of reality itself. Space and time are not separate. They are not absolute. They are a fabric, a weave, pliable and alive, bending under gravity's weight. And in that fabric, you are not a bystander. You are part of the weave. Think of the Earth. It spins, it orbits, it moves through the galaxy at hundreds of kilometers per second. And as it moves, it bends the space-time around it. You are not just carried along by this motion. You are part of it. Your seconds are being stretched, slowed, shaped by the very mass of the planet beneath you. And then think of the sun. Its mass bends spacetime so much that planets fall into orbit around it like marbles circling a depression in a stretched sheet. You live inside that depression. Your seconds are not only bent by Earth but by the sun itself, by the way its mass curves the fabric you inhabit. And beyond the sun, the galaxy. 100 billion stars, each one bending spacetime, each one stretching the rhythm of seconds in its vicinity. Together, their collective gravity holds the spiral arms of the Milky Way in their dance. Together, they sculpt the shape of time itself across our corner of the cosmos. And beyond the galaxy, clusters of galaxies, filaments of matter, dark energy pushing outward, all shaping the grand fabric in which your life is written. So when you ask whether gravity bends time, you are really asking, what is my place in the fabric? And the answer is both humbling and uplifting. You are small, yes, your seconds are just ripples on a thread inside an incomprehensibly vast weave, but you are also connected. The same physics that governs galaxies governs you. The same equations that describe black holes describe the seconds of your life. The same bending that shapes spacetime on the largest scales shapes your breath in this very moment. That is synthesis, not just acceptance but connection. Now let's take it deeper still, because if time bends, then history itself bends. The past is not a single universal story moving at one rhythm. It is a patchwork of local times, each unfolding at its own pace. When you look back at your memories, you are not recalling events that happened in a single clock. You are recalling events stitched together from bent seconds, each shaped by its own place in the fabric. And if history bends, so does the future. The path ahead is not fixed in one tempo. It is as pliable as the fabric itself. The seconds you will live are not generic. They are shaped by where you will be, by how gravity will hold you, by the bends you have not yet walked into. This does not make your future meaningless. It makes it alive. It makes it dynamic. It makes it something you are always writing, not just with your choices, but with your very presence in space-time. And when you think of death, when you think of the end of your seconds, it changes too, because relativity reminds you that endings are not simple, that the flow of time is different for different observers, that what feels like an ending to you may look different from another vantage point, that in the fabric of space-time nothing truly vanishes, it is written always into the geometry of the whole. So even mortality bends. Even the end of your thread is woven into the greater fabric. This too is a synthesis. And perhaps now you begin to see why the bending of time is not just a scientific idea, but a philosophical one. It reshapes how you see yourself, your life, your story. It asks you to let go of the illusion of universality and to embrace instead the beauty of relativity. It is not easy, it is not comfortable, but it is true. And the truth, once accepted, does not make the world colder, it makes it deeper. Look again at the night sky. You see stars scattered in silence, but now you know that each one is not only a point of light, but a bend in space-time, shaping time itself. You know that their light, stretched and slowed, carries the story of bent seconds across unimaginable distances. You know that your own seconds, as you watch, are being bent too. And suddenly, the sky is not just scenery. It is kinship. You are not looking at something separate from you. You are looking at the same fabric that bends your time. You are looking at the same universe that curves your life into its weave. And maybe that fills you with a quiet awe. Because the truth is this: to live in bent time is not to lose meaning, but to gain it. To realize that your seconds are unique, precious, connected. To realize that you are part of the same fabric as galaxies. To realize that gravity bends time, and that in doing so it bends you into the universe itself. This is not the end of synthesis. There is more to weave, more to accept, more to discover. But already you can feel it, the shift, the movement from fear to wonder, the opening of your imagination to a cosmos stranger, richer, more alive than you dreamed. You are living in bent time, always were, always will be, and that, far from breaking you, may be the most beautiful truth you have ever known. You have accepted it now. The resistance is gone, the fear is softened, the weight of evidence no longer feels like a burden pressing against you but like a horizon opening ahead. You are living inside bent time, and the thought does not unsettle you anymore. It steadies you, it deepens you. And so you begin to ask the next questions, the questions that live not in laboratories or telescopes, but in your own heart. If time bends, what does that mean for memory, for meaning, for death, for love? These are not questions science alone can answer. They belong to philosophy, to poetry, to the quiet reflections that rise when you let your mind wander in the dark. But relativity touches them too. And now that you've opened yourself to bent time, you cannot help but wonder. Start with memory. You carry your past with you as though it were fixed, a straight road stretching behind you. But relativity reminds you that road is not straight. It is bent, curved, shaped by gravity, by motion, by the fabric of spacetime itself. The seconds you lived were not uniform. They stretched differently depending on where you were, how you moved, what pulled on you. So what are memories really? They are not photographs of a universal past. They are stitches of personal time, local time, the seconds that bent specifically for you. Your childhood, your first love, your moments of loss and laughter, none of them unfolded in the same rhythm as anyone else's. This makes your memories even more precious. They are not copies of a shared rhythm. They are singular, unrepeatable, bent into shape by the universe itself. Now think of love. When you sit with someone you care for, when you hold their hand or listen to their voice, you imagine you are sharing the same moment. You call it now. But relativity tells you that you are not. Their time and your time are always slightly different, always flowing at different speeds. The now you share is a harmony, not an identity. And isn't that what love really is? Not sameness, but harmony. Not two lives moving in perfect step, but two different rhythms woven together into something that feels whole. The bending of time does not diminish love, it describes it. It shows you that togetherness has always been an act of weaving, of joining fractured moments into a fabric strong enough to hold. Then think of death. You imagine death as the end of your seconds, the moment when your thread of time runs out. But relativity complicates that too, because from different perspectives, the length of your thread changes. From one vantage point, your life may seem short, from another, long. To you, it feels steady. To the universe, it is relative. This does not mean death is not real. It is real as gravity itself. But it means that endings are not absolute. They are stitched into the fabric of space-time in ways you cannot fully comprehend. To you, your seconds end. To the universe, your seconds remain woven into its structure, part of the geometry forever. Perhaps that softens the sting. Perhaps it makes death feel less like erasure and more like integration. Not a disappearance, but a folding into the greater weave. And then think of meaning. So many people imagine meaning as something that requires absolutes. A steady universe, a shared time, a universal present. But relativity shows you that meaning does not need absolutes. It thrives in relativity. Because meaning is not found in constancy. It is found in connection, in the weaving of fractured threads into a pattern that matters. Your seconds bend differently than mine. But when we live together, when we speak and laugh and love, we stitch those bent seconds into a shared story. The story is not absolute, but it is real. And in that story, meaning lives. This is the philosophy of bent time, that you do not need a universal rhythm to matter. You only need your thread and the weaving you do with others. And perhaps this is why relativity feels so strange at first, because it asks you to give up the dream of absolutes. It asks you to accept that your story is local, partial, bent, but in return it gives you something better, the knowledge that your story is yours and no one else's. Your seconds are not less real because they are bent. They are more real because they are unique. Pause here, let that wash over you. Because you are not simply living in time. You are living in bent time. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat is a curve in space-time, shaped by gravity, by motion, by the weight of the universe around you. And once you see that, the world itself begins to glow differently. A stairway is no longer just a climb, it is a shift in seconds. A flight across the sky is no longer just distance, it is divergence in time. A glance at the stars is no longer just light, it is the record of bent moments stitched across the universe. The philosophy of bent time is not something you must hold constantly. That would be impossible. You will go back to living as though time is steady. You will keep your schedules, your calendars, your shared nows. You must. Life requires it. But in quiet moments, when you look at the night sky or when you close your eyes and let yourself drift, you can remember. You can remember that your life is a curve inside a fabric that bends. You can remember that your seconds are part of something cosmic. You can remember that relativity is not only physics but philosophy. And perhaps in those moments you will feel what you feel now, a quiet awe. Because gravity bends time, and that simple fact reshapes everything, your science, your culture, your love, your mortality, your meaning. It does not make life smaller, it makes it vast. It does not erase comfort, it deepens it. It does not steal your seconds, it gives them back to you more precious than ever because now you know they are not generic. They are singular, they are yours. This is what it means to live in bent time, to accept the fracture, to embrace the relativity, to find beauty not in absolutes but in harmonies. It is not easy, it was never meant to be easy, but it is true. And truth, once accepted, has its own kind of grace. You have walked far, from the first crack in certainty, through the strange paradoxes, through the cathedral of evidence, through the stubborn resistance of intuition and culture, all the way into a new kind of understanding. And now here you are. Looking back, the path feels different than it did when you first stepped on it. At the beginning, the question seemed simple. Can gravity bend time? You expected either a yes or a no, a neat answer you could tuck away like a solved puzzle. But the journey has shown you otherwise. The answer was never just yes or no. The answer was a story, a dismantling of illusions, a breaking of old habits, a slow rebuilding into something deeper. Now you see that bent time is not only a scientific fact, it is a lens, a way of seeing the universe, a way of seeing yourself. Think of it this way. Once you thought of yourself as a creature moving through time as though time were a river flowing steadily beneath you. But now you know that time itself is pliable. The river bends. The current changes depending on where you stand, how you move, how gravity holds you. You are not moving through time, you are woven into it. Your life is not simply a journey along the river, it is part of the shape of the river itself. This changes everything. Because if your life is woven into space-time, then you are not a visitor in the universe. You are part of its fabric. You are not watching reality unfold from the outside. You are reality, bending and being bent with every second you live. And suddenly, even ordinary things feel different. Walking up a hill is not just exercise, it is a shift in the rhythm of your seconds. Standing at the base of a mountain is not just awe, it is literally standing in slower time than the peak above you. Looking at starlight is not just beauty, it is reading the stretched seconds of distant stars, the record of bent time stitched across the void. The illusion of steady time is still with you, of course, it always will be. You will live by clocks, by schedules, by calendars. You will pretend with everyone else that seconds are identical, that now is shared. And that illusion will serve you well. It will keep you grounded, functional, capable of building and planning and loving. But beneath it you carry the deeper truth, that time is not steady, that now is not universal, that every second you live is unique, personal, bent into shape by the gravity of where you are and who you are. And far from frightening you, that truth now steadies you, because it means your life is not generic. It means your story is not a repetition of some universal script. It means your seconds belong only to you. But synthesis is not only about the personal, it is also about the cosmic. So lift your gaze again. Imagine the galaxies spiraling in their arms, their stars orbiting like fireflies around vast invisible centers. Imagine black holes swallowing light, bending time until seconds nearly freeze. Imagine clusters of galaxies stretching into filaments across the observable universe. All of this is bent time. The same principle that stretches your seconds at sea level stretches billions of years across the cosmos. The same relativity that shapes your breath shapes the evolution of galaxies. The fabric is one, and you are part of it. And here is the most humbling, most astonishing thought. The universe is not a stage on which you live your life. You are woven into its script. Your seconds, bent and curved, are as much a part of space-time as the light of stars. This is what it means to live in bent time, to stop imagining yourself as separate from the universe, and to see yourself instead as a thread in its weave. Pause here, let yourself feel it. Because this is a synthesis. The old world of absolutes is gone. The old comfort of universality is gone. But in its place is something richer, a universe alive, pliable, dynamic, a universe in which you are not a passenger but a participant. Even mortality feels different in this light. You once thought of death as the end of your time, the severing of your seconds from the flow. But relativity reminds you that your seconds do not vanish. They remain part of the fabric. The geometry of space-time records them, holds them, weaves them into the whole. To you they pass. To the universe they are written forever. This is not immortality. It is something stranger. It is belonging. It is permanence not of the self but of the story. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps it is more than enough. Now think again of love, of togetherness, of intimacy. You once feared that the fracture of time, that my seconds and your seconds could never truly be the same, would steal away the meaning of connection. But now you see the opposite. Connection is not the illusion of sameness. It is the miracle of harmony. When you sit with someone, your times are not identical, but you weave them together anyway. You sing in harmony, not unison, and harmony is richer than unison could ever be. This is synthesis too, to see fracture as beauty, to see difference as meaning, to see relativity as not only true but profound. And so you have reached the heart of it. Gravity bends time. That is the science. That is the fact. But more than that, gravity bending time reshapes how you live, how you love, how you see yourself in the universe. It is not just an answer to a question. It is an invitation to see the world differently. And now you are ready for what comes next. Because synthesis is never final. It is only a resting place, a plateau before the next climb. You have accepted bent time, you have woven it into your philosophy, but there are still questions, deeper, stranger, unanswered. What does it mean for the future of the universe, for the fate of all stories, for the mysteries that still lie beyond the horizon? The loop is about to open again. The ground will shift once more. The questions will return. But for now, in this moment, you can rest. You can breathe. You can feel the fabric of space-time cradling you, bending your seconds, weaving your story into its whole. You are not outside the universe. You are part of its fabric. You are living in bent time. Always were, always will be. You have arrived at a kind of wholeness. For hours you've walked this path, from the first shock of the question, through paradox, through proof, through resistance, and finally into synthesis. You've accepted that gravity bends time. You've woven it into your understanding of yourself, your relationships, your mortality, your place in the cosmos. And now you rest in that acceptance. But the story is not over, because every answer once accepted births new questions. Every synthesis once reached opens into new horizons. The journey of bent time does not end with understanding. It ends with wonder. So let's open the loop. You know now that gravity bends time. But how far does that bending go? What are its limits? What does it mean not just for your life, but for the life of the universe itself? Start with black holes again. They are the ultimate test of relativity, the places where space-time bends so much that even light cannot escape. From the outside, time near a black hole slows until it seems to freeze. From the inside, if we can even use the word inside, time is pulled into directions we can barely imagine. But here's the mystery. What happens beyond the horizon? From the outside you can never know. Information cannot escape. Light cannot escape. To you, the edge of a black hole is the end of knowledge, and yet relativity insists that something happens beyond it, something hidden perhaps forever from your eyes. Does time stop? Does it loop? Does it unravel? No one knows. And perhaps you feel it again, that quiet awe, that dizziness at the edge of comprehension, because gravity bending time is not a closed story. It is a door, always opening onto questions you cannot answer. Then think of the universe itself. Cosmologists tell us that space is expanding, galaxies drifting farther apart, the fabric of spacetime stretching like an endless rubber sheet. If gravity bends time locally, what does cosmic expansion do to it globally? What does it mean to say the universe has an age, when every galaxy, every star, every observer lives in bent seconds of their own? Is the universe truly 13.8 billion years old? Or is that number itself just a convenient fiction, a translation across countless fractured times into one story we can tell? And what about the end of the universe? Will it expand forever, stars burning out one by one, time stretching thinner and thinner until only silence remains? Will it collapse back on itself, a great reversal, crushed as surely as space? Will dark energy, whatever it is, write a fate stranger than either? Each scenario is not just about space, it is about time. The bending of time does not stop with your seconds, it shapes the destiny of everything. And yet you cannot know, you can only ask. So the loop opens wider. What is time itself, really? We've spoken of it as a dimension, as part of space-time, as something bent by gravity. But is that the final word? Or is time even stranger than Einstein imagined? Quantum physics hints at deeper puzzles. In the quantum world, cause and effect blur, events unfold without clear order. Time itself begins to look less like a flow and more like a network of probabilities. Some physicists wonder whether time is emergent, whether it is not fundamental at all, but something that appears only when the universe is large and structured enough to notice it. If that is true, then gravity bending time is not the deepest story. It is only the surface of something deeper. What bends beneath time itself, no one knows. And so, even now, after all the clarity, you are left again in mystery. But perhaps you notice something. This mystery does not frighten you the way it once did. In the beginning, the thought that time might bend unsettled you, cracked your intuition, left you dizzy. Now the thought that there is more, that time itself might be stranger still, fills you not with fear but with wonder, because you have learned something along the way. You have learned that broken intuitions can be mended, that resistance can be softened, that truth can deepen meaning instead of destroying it. You are ready for the open loop, so ask the questions freely. What lies beyond the horizon of a black hole? What is the true age of the universe? Is time fundamental, or is it an illusion that emerges from something deeper? Does gravity bend not just time, but reality itself? You cannot answer them now, perhaps no one ever will, but that is the beauty. The unanswered questions keep the story alive. They keep you awake in wonder, even as they lull you towards sleep. Because science is not a finished book. It is an endless conversation. Every truth opens into a question, every question opens into another horizon. And now, as you sit here in the quiet, you are part of that conversation. You began by asking, can gravity bend time? And you discovered not only that it can, but that the question itself opens into countless others. So rest here on the edge of what is known, rest in the open loop, rest in the wonder, because the journey is not over, it never is. The universe is still bending, time is still bending, and you are bending with it. You've come a long way. From the first jolt of the question, to the breaking of intuition, to the cathedral of evidence, to the stubborn resistances and their collapse, to the quiet wonder of synthesis, and finally into this, the open horizon, the unresolved, the mystery. And now, at the very end, you find yourself looking outward again and inward at the same time. Gravity bends time, that much is certain. The clocks, the satellites, the starlight, the waves of space-time, they all whisper it, they all insist upon it. The universe has given its answer. But certainty is never the end. Certainty is only a doorway into questions you cannot close. So you stand here at the edge of comprehension and you begin to wonder, what else bends? If gravity can bend time, then what of consciousness? What of memory? What of the lives we live inside our fragile human frames? If time itself can be stretched, fractured, slowed, or quickened, then what does that say about the moments we treasure, the moments we fear, the moments that slip by unnoticed? Could it be that even our perception of meaning bends, like time does, stretching differently depending on the gravity of our experiences? You think about your childhood, how summers seem to last forever, each day an ocean of possibility. And you think about adulthood, how years now slip by with alarming speed, like seconds spilling through your fingers. Time has always bent, not only under gravity, but in the gravity of your own mind. And suddenly relativity feels less alien, because you have lived it in your own way. You have felt seconds stretch and contract. You have felt minutes become eternities and years collapse into nothing. Maybe the physics of the cosmos and the physics of your heart are not so different after all. Pause here, feel the quiet weight of that thought. Because relativity is not only out there, it is in here. It is the bending of your story, the pliability of your life. And yet the questions stretch further still. Black holes remain waiting like silent puzzles. Horizons you cannot cross, singularities you cannot see. Are they ends or beginnings? Do they destroy time or rewrite it? No one knows, perhaps no one will ever know. And maybe that is their gift, to remind you that mystery is part of the fabric too. The universe itself stretches outward, galaxies racing apart, the cosmic fabric pulled thinner with every second. Does time stretch with it? Will there come a day when stars no longer shine, when clocks no longer tick, when time itself becomes so diluted it cannot be measured at all? Or is there something deeper, something we have not yet glimpsed? A truth beneath time, beyond relativity, waiting for minds not yet born to discover? No one can say. And so the loop remains open. You began with a question, you end with questions. That is how it must be. Because questions are the gravity of curiosity, bending your attention, pulling you onward, deeper and deeper into wonder. And perhaps that is the real gift of gravity. Not just that it bends time, but that it bends you, bends your imagination, your intuition, your longing for answers. Gravity pulls you down to the ground, yes, but it also pulls your mind upward, into the stars, into mysteries that may never resolve. So rest here in the mystery. Rest in the thought that your seconds are bent, unique, unrepeatable. Rest in the awareness that your story is stitched into the same fabric as galaxies. Rest in the wonder that you are part of a universe that is not rigid but alive, not absolute but pliable, not simple but endlessly strange. You do not need to resolve it. You do not need to explain it. You do not need to hold it in your hands. You only need to live it. And you are living it already. Every second you breathe is bent by gravity. Every moment you remember is stretched by motion. Every heartbeat you feel is part of a universe that curves itself around mass and light and time. You are not outside of this story, you are this story. And as the seconds drift now soft and slow, you can feel the bend, not as a shock, not as a paradox, but as a lullaby. Because gravity bends time, and time bends you. And you bend, too, into sleep, into mystery, into the endless curve of existence. The camera pulls back, first from your room, then from your city, then from Earth itself. You dissolve into the planet, into the orbit of the moon, into the pull of the sun, into the spiral of the galaxy, into the cosmic web of galaxies stretching out beyond measure. And everywhere, always, seconds bend. The universe whispers its final words to you, soft as breath, steady as gravity itself. There is no one time. There are only many. And they are all beautiful. So rest. You are living in bent time.